Now then, while the world waited this month to see if the West would go to war with Iraq, the Pentagon was coming under the most sustained attack it has ever known. Not from the forces of Saddam Hussein, but from computer hackers based in America and Britain. 8 years ago, the idea of a war started by hackers made for a very good Hollywood plot. This week, even the Pentagon admitted that they were worried of that. Well, in our Cardiff studio is Matthew Bevan, a former computer hacker, and with me here in the studio is Peter Summer, a computer security expert and research fellow at the London School of Economics. Good morning, gentlemen. Now, Matthew, last year, I understand you nearly started a war between North and South Korea because of your computer hacking. Just first of all, could you have got into the Pentagon as these people did?
Well, the Pentagon is just a computer system like any other. The fact that it is a target and is the head of the top world power just makes it even more so a target.
In this particular case, the hackers were unable to get into classified sections of the computers. Could you have done that?
Well, I wouldn't like to say myself, but the fact is that even if the hackers had got into classified information, I do not think that the Pentagon would wish to be publicising that fact, and they will do everything to keep that.
You mean they'd never admit it, even if it had happened?
Absolutely not.
Is it? Well, let's take a look at what is possible from for most people, this is so far removed from anything that they can consider. Can you literally sit at home and using a sort of PCs that you can get at home and the equipment that you can buy readily, get into the Pentagon?
Well, I don't see why not. There are plenty of computer systems out there, and the Pentagon is not unlike any of the others. You would think that they would have a bit more protection perhaps on their computer systems, but this isn't necessarily the case. The cost of the PC which is used is really not a fact that needs to be worried about.
Matthew, last year, this North and South Korea story, why were you so interested in something that got you to the stage where you really were threatening a war?
Well, I wouldn't like to say that I was threatening a war. That could perhaps be a little propaganda on behalf of the US government. But I was looking for information regarding UFOs, and that's why I targeted military bases in particular. But I had no ulterior motive and was not the foreign spy which I was brandished to be.
Now, I know, Peter, you actually defended him in the case last year, didn't you?
Well, I acted as the defence expert. There were actually two people charged at the same time, and I'm very familiar with what Matt did. I mean, he did not invent any new hacking techniques, but he used the available hacking techniques with considerable skill. There are large numbers of tools available on the internet which enable people to hack with considerable ease.
Well, there's a whole website which is given prevalence to how to get into hacking.
Oh no, there are a lot more than just one, I assure you.
Well, the one that I've seen, and certainly one of the easiest ways according to hackers, is you just phone someone up and ask them the password.
Well, the techniques.
Is it that simple?
Well, I mean that's what people call social engineering. But the techniques that Matt and others used were rather more sophisticated than that. But the problem was that the problem was that the American military do not secure their computers very well. But you also have to remember there are over 2 million military computers. Many of them are actually PCs very similar to the sorts we see in this office and that we have in our homes. So when you attack a military computer, you may only be attacking a PC.
But isn't it the point that there is only so far even the best hacker can go to get into the kind of classified secrets that the Pentagon would want to keep away from prying eyes? They can't get through all the security mechanisms. I mean, the Pentagon itself employs a number of people just to go around all the systems and protect it and ensure there are no loopholes.
It is certainly the case that the most secure systems are not linked to the internet. But it is also true in the case of the person co-charged with Matt Bevan that there were 3 files that the prosecution claimed were of security significance and were potentially the subject of a public interest immunity certificate.
So, knowing what you know, are you worried when you about from effectively military threats, wars starting unwittingly by people like Matthew sitting at home in their bedroom?
I've got a slightly different scenario. Matt was characterised in a report to the US Senate as probably coming from Latvia. There was a misdiagnosis by the American military of the threats that's facing them. So whilst nobody thinks that Matt is really a threat or that he is a Latvian, he's a very nice chap. I've met him many times. But I think the worry is, and it's actually very similar to, you know, the Lee Clegg problem. There is somebody who has to make a decision in a split moment. Is the car hurtling towards the checkpoint in Ireland containing kids on a joyride, or is it a terrorist? Now, the problem is very similar in cyberspace for the American military. Is it a hacker coming in, or is it some sort of spy who wants to try and bring down the military infrastructure? And is the training adequate for those people? That, I think, is a scenario that perhaps one should worry about.
We've talked basically about very classified material, but on the day-to-day basis, there are commercial problems as well. A lot of companies, particularly banks, have got to be very careful about possible fraud from hackers getting in. Is there a real significant risk of hackers being able to get into the banking system?
No, the problem for bankers is actually insider fraud. It's not enough to be able to, for an external hacker to be able to get inside a banking system. He's got to understand the commercial infrastructure of a bank. Otherwise, there's very little that they can do. Most types of fraud, most types of hacking are actually internal hacking. They don't fall into the category that Matt falls into, or fell into. The problem, of course, is also a question of public confidence.
Okay, well, let's look on that public confidence. Many people are worried about, for example, they're having a bank account on their own computer. Matt, tell us, I know I'm sure you wouldn't, and we've just heard what a good, nice chap you are here from Peter.
And we certainly wouldn't advise it.
But, Matthew, could you hack into someone's bank account on their own computer?
Well, the computer systems that govern banks are just like any other. The operating systems that
so that's a yes.
That govern them. Well, yes, I don't see why it should be any different. The fact is that if your information is stored electronically, then it is subject to hackers changing or altering it.
Would you ever have your own bank account on your own computer at home?
That's something that I maybe need to think about.
That was a dreadful cop-out, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
What can they, just very, very briefly, I know it's one of these impossible questions, Peter, but is there anything that they can do? Will hackers always be one step ahead?
I think organisations need to understand that computer hardware and software is about 15% of the total costs of having a computer system. Almost everything else is to do with security. It's a question of spending serious money on the subject.
Peter Summer and Matthew Bevan, thank you both very much for talking to me.